Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and persons in between. My name is Tim Snowborn, and I am back from London, so let's go over my vacation photos. Yes, I had a jolly good time in England, a jolly good time indeed. So, I thought I would show you what I did while I was there. I took a bunch of tours and heard a lot of interesting stories about the history of the area. I mean, the town itself is like 2,000 years old. I was surrounded by things that were much older than my entire country, which was fascinating. And so I want to show you what I was up to the whole time. I want to do this now while it's still fresh in my memory. I believe I took over 400 pictures. I'm not going to talk about them all. You will probably see most of them, but I'll just cover the highlights, anything that, or I learned a story about the picture. There's an album full of street art that I'm probably just not going to show because I don't really have anything to add to the experience other than just, oh, that's very nice. I like that. That's it. There's no real story or anything to go with the picture. So yeah, let's dive in. Alright, so here we are, our first shot from the trip. This is the door to the hostel that I stayed in. I stayed in the Safe Stay Elephant and Castle. Can anyone see what's odd about this door? That's right, the doorknob is in the middle for some reason. I don't know why that is. I saw a few doors like this around London. Don't know what's up with that. I actually got to the hostel a day late. See, I flew on a Tuesday, so I booked my first night there on a Tuesday. But then when I got there, I realized, oh wait, it's Wednesday now. So, I just crossed in so many different time zones and got there a day later than I expected. And they had me down as a no-show. Which is, they were very nice about it. They shuffled things around and put me in another room. I'm sure it's a common enough problem for people coming from this side of the pond. My first taste of quote-unquote British food. Yeah, I got there really early in the morning and you couldn't actually check in until the afternoon, so I had some time to kill, so I went down to the nearest McDonald's and got me some breakfast. That is just some ham and bacon on a bun, no other fixins, no dressing, just ham and bacon on some bread, and then the hash brown and the orange juice that's way too small. This is the first picture I took from the second floor of one of the many double-decker buses that I rode on. I only rode on the second floor of the double-decker buses. Of course I did, because why wouldn't you? I thought if I lived in London, I would only ever ride on the second floor of the buses. I was just stoked that it wasn't just the tour buses that had 2 floors. There were some single-floor buses, but most of them were these 2-story red buses like you see in the far background there. A lot of these zigzag lines on the road, I don't know. To me it looked like the person painting the lines had been fired, but they still had to work that last day and they completely checked out and stopped giving a shit. But my British friend tells me that it's to signify that you're approaching the lights. I don't know why you don't just look at the lights instead of looking at the painted lines on the road. I would think that the lights themselves would be more obvious than the painted lights on the road, but whatever. I think I took this picture mostly for the quote at the bottom there. You can see it says, "Patriotism is not enough. I must have no hatred or bitterness for anyone." I like that. This, I believe, is Admiral Horatio Nelson. Born in 1758, died in 1805. He was a war hero in the British Navy. He won many battles at sea, of course. Eventually, in 1805, he was shot by a French sniper from another ship, and he requested to be buried at home in England. Most of the time, seamen are, of course, buried at sea because there's not really a good way of preserving them. But he specifically requested to be buried at home, and that they did the only thing they could to preserve him. They stuffed his body in a barrel and filled it with brandy, because it would be a month before they made port again in England. And when they got back to England, they opened up the barrel and discovered that his body was there, but the brandy was gone, because the sailors had been siphoning off drinks from the barrel, knowing that he was in there, I'm pretty sure. And that, and this is true, is where we get the expression, a stiff drink. One of the fountains at Trafalgar Square. Selfie, yeah, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this, but I don't much care for the way I look on camera. The camera really does add 10 pounds and apparently 10 years. I assure you I'm better looking in real life. Same one with Horatio Nelson. I just had to have the one with the lion there. Selfie with the lion. Another shot of the lions here, like those guys. More from Trafalgar Square. Feeding the ducks. Don't remember who this was. I was on a tour. I apologize for not knowing who some of these people are and what some of these buildings are. I believe that's Queen Elizabeth and King George VI. I don't remember what this was. I want to say it was outside an orphanage or something, but it was across the street from a building that they said, like, the Queen gets a lot of birthday cards on her birthday, and they get processed at the building this was across the street from. It's also the place where they plan what's going to happen when the Queen dies. I mean, you know, she's in her early 90s now, so she's not expected to be around much longer. And they plan what's going to happen when the Queen dies at the building across the street from this. I want to say the Prime Minister is supposed to stay there. Here we are, Buckingham Palace. It was smaller than I expected, although this is only one building out of, I think, 5 or 6. And it was nice, just a little smaller than I expected again. It's not a residence. The Queen doesn't live there. She lives in Windsor Castle most of the time. It's mostly just an office for formal gatherings or whatever, official business. Another angle. Selfie. Daffodils in the park outside on the palace grounds. So I made it all the way to London, and the Big Ben is covered, completely covered in scaffolding. You could not see it except for the faces. They were doing some restoration and maintenance work, I guess, but it was very unfortunate. There was a square, I think it was outside St. Paul's Cathedral. Many statues of different historical figures around there. Winston Churchill was there, of course, and for some reason so was Abraham Lincoln. I guess they really respected the hell out of him and gave him a statue. Parliament and Big Ben there. This is an exhibit at the Tate Modern Museum. It's the Modern Art Museum there in London. Most of the museums in London are free, by the way. And this was the Modern Art Museum. My favorite part is the Lollipop Guild back there on the left. That was great. You'll see a closer shot of them in a minute. There they are. Charming, aren't they? Coming to you live from Piccadilly Circus. They had a Bubba Gump shrimp there. I thought that was great. I ate there. I mean, didn't quite get what I wanted. Wanted some Cajun spiced shrimp. They didn't really have that. At least the waiter kind of gave me a hard time about ordering an appetizer. Anyway. When hiking through the forest, be careful not to sit on the poison ivy or you might end up with Ichibans. This was in Chinatown, as you may have guessed. There were a few of these guys dressed as Yoda in different places around town. This guy's got his little rig there where he's pretending to float off the ground like that. I found that one of them was off duty, though. That is his abandoned set. Really spoiled the magic for me. Another sculpture there in Piccadilly Circus. Every souvenir shot had bongs. My British friend told me that the police there pretty much don't care. I mean, it is still illegal, but they've got bigger fish to fry. Great. A lot of the souvenir shops had these masks. That's a couple of soccer players there at the top. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Prince Charles, Justin Bieber, and Kate Middleton. Chinatown. This was a casino, and I almost missed it. Here in America, casinos are much more advertised and obvious and, hard to miss. But this place, I almost walked by without realizing what it was. Don't know what this was, but it looked cool, so I took a picture. This was at the top of this building here on the left. That is actually the Australian Embassy, but for any Harry Potter fans in the audience, that is also the place where they filmed Gringotts Wizarding Bank at the beginning of Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2. The guide said that if you were really nice and friendly, that they might actually let you poke your head in and have a look, but probably not. Again, can't remember the name of this place. I want to say Westminster Abbey or possibly St. Paul's Cathedral. This church took some damage in World War II. I think this was one of the ones that was actually spared by the Nazis because they used it as a reference point for navigation. More beautiful architecture. More beautiful architecture. Again, I wish I knew the name of this place. If anyone knows what this place was called, please leave it in the comments. This was, I believe this was a marker for the border between the City of London and the Borough of Westminster. People don't realize that the actual City of London is only about 1 square mile. Everything else is called the Greater London area, which includes the Borough of Westminster, as I said. And that's most of the city. And this is one of the places that mark the border there. Same border marker from another angle. This is Hodge. Hodge belonged to a man named Samuel Johnson. Johnson was, among other things, a popular writer and a wealthy socialite, and the first person to put together an English dictionary. Johnson actually had several cats, but Hodge was the only one with a name because he was Johnson's favorite. Now, Johnson actually fed his cats seafood. See, back in the day, the cost of a food had a lot to do with how far it had to travel to get to you. The further away it came from, the more expensive it was. But if it came from nearby, it was relatively cheap, which is why the seafood was fed to the cats, because they could catch lots of seafood off the coast there. Hodge ate mostly oysters, which was considered a commoner's food at the time. It was considered scandalous for Johnson or any of his servants to be seen buying the oysters. People actually thought he had fallen on hard times. It almost ruined his career. That change you see next to Hodge there is oyster money. I don't know if they actually trained him to go buy the oysters himself, but that's what the change is for. Another shot of Hodge there. On my first tour of London, the tour guide showed us several cathedrals and churches, all built by the same architect whose name escapes me, unfortunately. This one is said to have inspired the wedding cakes that we see today with all the different layers, although there was some argument as to whether the cakes inspired the cathedral or the cathedral inspired the cakes. This is Queen Anne. For those of you who don't live in Seattle, there's a neighborhood in Seattle named after her. I can't remember what she was famous for exactly. She was queen in the late 17th, early 18th century. Another great shot of Queen Anne there. This was a very large cathedral with a very large dome. Used to be the biggest dome in all of Europe, I think. This Catholic pagoda looking thing was in the middle of town. I don't know why. I liked it. I just like this logo. This was to commemorate the Great Fire of London in 1666. It was a huge fire, of course, burnt most of the town down. Not a lot of people actually died in the fire, like maybe 10 or 12 people, because fires were fairly common back then, so it was kind of like, oh, did another fire break out? Well, I'll just calmly evacuate to the hills and wait for things to calm down. So not a lot of people died. It started in a bakery, I believe, and the top of that tower, the tour guide said that if you tipped that tower over, I can't remember what direction, but if you tipped that tower over, the top would touch the actual site where the fire started. In the plus column, the fire actually ended the plague in London because it burnt a lot of the rats and fleas that carried the plague and the habitats that they lived in. Alright, so I think I'm going to leave this episode here. I'm going to cut this thing in half to make it more digestible. I'll publish the rest of this video tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have ever been to London, please tell me of your adventures in the comments below. If you know the names of any of the people or places that I've forgotten, leave those in the comments below. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me for this video. I hope that you'll subscribe to my channel and check out my previous videos for more. If you're a current subscriber, welcome back. It's great to have you joining me again. I really appreciate all your continued support. Till next time, everyone, take care.